Welcome to Jackson Reviews, the channel where I go through the best and worst horror movies so you don't have to. I'm Sam Jackson, and today we're going to be going through Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Now, before I get into this review, I'm going to kind of be honest, if this was some kind of like Hellraiser Evil Dead crossover movie, I would love it to pieces. But the fact this is a Friday film, it's a little shit. The film was made 4 years after a previous film, and this time done by New Line Cinema, who are mostly famous for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but in more modern times they're known for stuff like Lord of the Rings and the Conjuring series and It and stuff like that. So to be fair, they've done well, but in the 90s they were pretty terrible. The film plays way too fast and loose with the continuity, and it only really takes any kind of inspiration from the first, second, and sixth movies. The rest of them they kind of discard, but still lightly acknowledge, and it's a weird timeline because it makes no sense and doesn't follow up after part 8 and just kind of ignores that ending, which is something that none of the films had really done before. The film's main producer was Sean S. Cunningham, who was the original director of the first movie, but he didn't direct this one, and from the sounds of it, he didn't give half a shit about the movie anyway. Instead, one of his son's friends, Adam Marcus, who was only 23 at the time and very inexperienced as a director, ended up leading the whole project, and that's where a lot of this falls apart. Not forgetting, of course, the movie itself was written in 4 days, and that is literally from when the first draft to the final draft, 4 days. The movie received extremely negative reviews, similar to Part 8, but actually surprisingly holds like a 20 or 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, which honestly shocks me a little. To be fair to this movie, the gore is incredible, and with that kind of stuff out of the way, let's get straight into the review of Friday the 13th Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell. The movie begins as all these films do, where we get some random victim who gets attacked by Jason. The victim is pretty tough and eventually is revealed to be an FBI agent who has set up Jason, and after this very over-dramatic and quite funny shootout sequence, Jason is blown to little bits and pieces. We then get one of the few times I will actually compliment this movie when I say that action sequence was pretty damn cool, and the opening credits aren't actually boring, as it's intercut with important scenes, much better than Part 7 and 8, which was just really over the top and boring extended credits. Then we get to one of the many times I insult this movie. Jason's heart possesses the doctor to eat it so Jason's soul can be transferred into his body. Coroner Jason then kills the other coroner, and in a pretty great and gory kill. He then kills 2 of the other security guards off screen. One of the guards is played by Kane Hodder, who also portrayed Jason in Parts 7 and 8 and ends up portraying him in Jason X. We then get the usual character introductions. We meet this douchey newscaster Robert, Creighton Duke, who is badass as fuck, Jason's half-sister Diana, yep, that's where this film's going, waitress Vicky, cafe owner Joey and her husband Shelley, as well as her son Ward, as well as the sheriff and his deputy Randy. Duke reveals the out-of-nowhere half-sister plot twist and warns Diana that Jason is coming, and then we get introduced to the film's actual main protagonist, Stephen. Stephen is basically Diana's, ex-son-in-law, even though Jessica, who is Diana's daughter, was never actually married to Stephen, but it's much easier to explain than just going into full detail because it's way too much shit to go through. We talk about his relationship with Diana's daughter Jess. Stephen then later on decides to go have a conversation with her, but accidentally bumps into some hitchhikers. They decide they should head to Camp Crystal Lake now that Jason is dead, but the usual thing occurs, Jason isn't dead and he kills the 3. One is boring, one is off screen, we see a weird sex scene, but the final kill is supreme. I will happily insult this dumb shit movie storyline, but holy fuck, this kill is awesome. Jason then hunts down Diana and we get some really nice classic stalker shots, but after she leaves, Jason decides that he needs a new body. He kills the cop's wife in one of the few kind of lame kills in this movie. Then he kidnaps the cop in a very nice Hellraiser-esque, erotic horror scene, which I kind of enjoyed despite the fact it was really bizarre and very out of place in a Friday movie. Diana calls her daughter Jess so we can basically see that she has a baby, and then Jason attacks Diana. He nearly possesses her until Stephen stops it, leading to Jason accidentally killing Diana, and Stephen throwing him out the window. The cops find Stephen in the most stereotypical it's all a coincidence way, and he's locked in a jail cell where Duke also is, because apparently talking to someone at a diner warrants this, I guess. We also find out though how much of a sociopath Duke really is, and he gives us this new Jason mythology as long as Stephen lets him break his fingers because okay. Stephen breaks out of jail by basically being a bit of a dick, and he sees his baby at the diner in a kind of sweet and emotional scene. He then heads to the Voorhees house, which is made up for this movie and spelt incorrectly anyway, and sees the douchey news guy from earlier getting possessed, and Diana's dead body is also here, I guess, because the news guy wanted it to be, or some other bullshit plot convenience which is necessary for the final act of this movie. But to be fair, we get one of the best deaths, and no matter how much I hate this movie, this is cool. Like, the police officer's body just slowly melts in an awesome, disturbing body horror sequence, and Jesus Christ, the gore. And even if it wasn't gory, this is just cool as shit. News Jason then tries to possess Jessica, and Stephen is able to save her through, and like, just get used to Stephen saving people, basically. We get a kind of interesting cat and mouse sequence where Stephen is basically trying to prove that Robert is dead as fuck, but she doesn't believe him, and then she runs off to tell the police because reasons, even though he literally ran him over with a car, and he's fine. Stephen's old friend Randy then appears, and we get a really awful fight sequence followed by a really great comedy sequence. Stephen agrees to get arrested in order to save Jessica, but News Jason is already at the station. He kills some cops and grabs Jessica, where Stephen once again saves her, and shoots Jason until he drops down. During the confusion, Stephen and Jessica are able to run to the diner, and Duke is able to escape as well. The two main characters then get stuck at the diner, where Joey holds them at gunpoint as Jason gets closer and closer. We get a pretty awesome big massacre with tons of great injuries, deaths and gore. My favourite being Vicky's, as she basically gets 2 deaths. She gets impaled and then she gets another awesome head crush, which I just love in these films. It's honestly just a bit of a shame that this scene has so much fucking slow motion. The Resident Evil movie creators basically cited it as an influence. Jessica runs to Voorhees' house, which is still spelled incorrectly, because Duke stole their kid. Why not? Stephen ends up following her, blah blah blah. We then get the dumbest and cheesiest part of the film with a shitty magic dagger, which is the only thing that can kill Jason as long as it's held by someone with Voorhees blood, and he can only be reborn by a Voorhees. Remember earlier when I mentioned this film's shit storyline? Well, it's really coming into play now, isn't it? Duke then falls into some random trapdoor or something and he gets wounded as Jason possesses one of the cops off screen. And then, oh look, coincidentally, 2 cops arrive, with both the sheriff and Randy, who both talk and both act relatively normal. Something Jason was unable to do for any of his other possession things. Hint, hint to how fucking annoying this moment is. After a few moments, Jessica accidentally stabs the sheriff, and Randy is Jason or whatever. He tries to possess the baby before Stephen once again saves everyone, leading to Jason leaving Randy's body. And then we just see exactly how Jason looks in this film. And honestly, it's something from the 4th Puppet Master movie. Jason is eventually thrown into the basement where Duke escapes, and he possesses Diana through her. Yeah. The real Jason then pops out because fuck it, why not? And Duke gets bear hugged to death. We then see a Stephen vs Jason fight where Stephen should have been killed like 100 times, but fuck it, he's the main protagonist, so it hardly even hurts him. And all this ends with Jessica using the magic dagger to kill Jason after a really strong and kind of cool kick to lodge it in. We then see some really horrifically cheap, like, foam hands drag Jason underground. We've a kind of short fake out for Stephen, but don't worry, once again, the main protagonist, he won't die. And then Jason is officially dead for like the 4th time in this franchise. And we get a truly, really bad and cheesy walkway into the sunset moment for the main characters. And that's basically it, except no. Because we actually get to see the real reason why this movie was made in the first place, where Jason's mask is pulled underground by Freddy Krueger's claw, which kind of leads into events of Freddy vs Jason, but that would take another 12 years to come out after this movie. With all that done, Jason really is in hell. And upon watching the movie again, is it as bad as I originally remember? Honestly, no. The kills in this movie really do help it, and to be fair, some of the characters like Duke are really likeable, but the storyline is the biggest horse shit I've ever seen in a movie, and I will explain why. None of it makes sense. This is the kind of shitty fanfiction to expect to see on a modern day forum. It's just crap and cheesy, and you could really tell that it was written in 4 days. Other issues with the film, just not even mentioning this plot because it's so obviously bad. It has a really crappy, very cheesy, very orchestral soundtrack throughout it, which really doesn't fit with the tone of the movie, and it just kind of seems really dated and really 90s. One of my biggest pet peeves of this film, though, is the fact they keep spelling Voorhees wrong. Like, how little care do you have for the franchise that you're meant to be part of if you can't even spell the main character's fucking surname correctly? I just found it a little bit half-hearted and like they didn't really care, and this was obviously just a cash-in to introduce Freddy vs. Jason. Going back to the storyline though, the whole sibling dynamic thing, it just is directly ripped off from the Halloween sequels, like in every possible way. Even if we don't include all like the Laurie stuff, the Jamie Lloyd storyline in parts 4 and 5 of the Halloween movies, that's essentially this film just in a nutshell. Except with the Halloween films, at least they're a bit more entertaining than this pile of shit. One of my main issues with this film though is it's very yo-yo. Like just for example, the fight scene between Randy and Steven. The fight scene itself is horrific, but the actual conversations between it is brilliant. Like it's really funny, it's really banterous, and it's quite good for like character development and just kind of getting to know these people. But so many of the actual scenes, you could tell this was by a first-time director because it was so badly done and so cheesily done. It kind of takes away from the main elements. But anyway, let's just go into the fun facts because, to be fair with this film, they have a lot of fun facts. And in the description I will be linking a website because I normally do around about 5 and a couple more maybe, but there's tons on this one, and I would definitely recommend that people check it out. The first is, despite the fact that the film was touted as their final Friday, New Line had absolutely no intention to end the series. That's kind of obvious to the fact they left the Freddy vs. Jason thing, but tons of other stuff. The studio was very open to doing more films after this, even if it didn't include the crossover, so that kind of just proves that this was basically a gimmick to get like butts in seats, and they did a very similar thing with the final Freddy film, where even though they said that, they knew that they had another one prepared if they wanted to go into production with it, which kind of proves New Line were kind of dicks in the 90s. Once again, similar to part 7, this film was meant to be the long-awaited Freddy vs. Jason movie, but stuff happened and then we decided maybe we should actually do something to lead into it, and then this film was made. It's kind of a negative because I think if they made it around at this time, it could have been a lot better than the one we got in 2003, because that one was so modernised and kind of cheesy that kind of sunk the film. But then again, it could have even been worse because let's be honest, both this film and the 6th Nightmare on Elm Street films were pretty bad. So if it were made around at this time, this crossover would have been horrific. As mentioned earlier, the film's final script was literally written in 4 days. Like from start to finish, 4 days. Originally there was another script apparently written that took like months to do, but it was scrapped, and instead Sean S. Cunningham just hired one of his old friends and just went, hey, write this for me, and was like, yeah, sure, whatever, paycheck. But to be fair, at least the guy who did write it in those 4 days does have a little bit of a cameo as one of the coroners, so hey, the more you know. Going back to the first-hand directing thing though, the original cut of this movie literally was unusable. Apparently only about 50 minutes of the film were actually salvageable, leading to like around about 40 to 45 minutes of reshoots being needed, and even that apparently didn't go very well, and it kind of stands out. A lot of the final acts and tons of the extra character development stuff, that was literally the reshoots, which kind of stands out for me since all of those parts, with like the reshoots of all the comedy and character development, they were the best parts of the movie, so what the fuck was this original 50 minutes? There's been a lot of debate between who was to blame for this movie, be it Sean S. Cunningham or Adam Marcus. Both of them have kind of said different things, and in the Crystal Lakes Memories documentary, which I have now watched, thank you person who yelled at me for that on Facebook, Sean S. Cunningham apparently stated that Adam delivered a movie which was not so good. Whilst in retaliation, Adam said in an interview that Cunningham didn't really give him any help and just said get rid of that damn hockey mask and make whatever movie you want, so both of them are kind of to blame for the fact it was a bit shit. But a little bonus fact for you, which this is also kind of been led into through a comic series, the film was kind of a first mention where the Friday the 13th movie is linked into the Evil Dead, with both the Necronomicon Ex Morta, like the Book of the Dead, appearing in this film, as well as the Dagger of Sarah. The evil dagger basically from Evil Dead 2, it appears, and I like it as a little bit of a reference, but when it's the main plot point of your movie, just make it a fucking Evil Dead film. Now, all in all, did I enjoy this movie? No. I think there's a difference between being entertained by a movie and enjoying a movie. The Sharknado movies I find very entertaining, but I don't like them. Like, they're awful films, but they're very entertaining. But it doesn't mean that I like them. It's much more the kind of thing where it's so bad it's good. And I think that's where Jason Goes to Hell kind of falls into. Like, there's so many errors in this movie that are just really crap, really shit, or could easily be ironed out by someone who basically had more time and cared a lot more. But because it didn't, this film was just kind of shit. But at least, to be fair, it's the good kind of shit. And I'd say that as well for Jason X. Both of them are kind of a good kind of shit, which, stop yelling at me for this, but it's a lot better than part 5 at least. But with so many of the errors, just with the continuity of the franchise, the terrible storyline, some of the characters being horrifically dislikable, I can't say I like it. But at the same time, I can't say I dislike it because some badass kills, some really good comedy sequences, the Duke, for crying out loud. Creighton Duke is awesome as hell. And to be fair, just how dark but yet comedic this entry was, it kind of threw me back to part 6, and I like having any reference to part 6 if I'm being honest. But anyway, that was my review of Friday the 13th part 9, Jason Goes to Hell, or Jason Goes to Hell the Final Friday. If you did enjoy this, please be sure to like, share and subscribe. I'm sorry that I didn't upload a video on Tuesday. Some personal stuff came up, but don't worry, next week I'm also only going to be doing one video, and that'll be Jason X, but at least it gave me more time to actually focus on what I wanted to do for this, and I actually think it ends up a much better video than what I was originally going to do, which would basically just be ranting about the film. But no, if you did enjoy this, please be sure to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you all next week for Jason X. Goodbye!